I never thought a single question from my mother could tear open a part of my life I've spent years trying to bury. "When's your wedding?" she asked so casually, like she wasn't touching the very wound I've kept stitched shut with silence and distance. She had no idea what that question meant, or what it dragged back to the surface. People see me now and assume everything is in order. They see strength, stability, maybe even happiness. What they don't see is the truth I've carried alone, the truth about the man I once thought I would spend my life with. The man who taught me what love felt like, and what betrayal could do to a woman's soul. For so long, I let the memory of what he did sit quietly in the shadows, pretending it no longer had power over me. But the moment my mother asked about marriage, the past clawed its way back up, sharper and darker than before, reminding me of the night everything shattered and the decision I made afterward that changed everything. I didn't just walk away from him. I didn't just heal. I did something he never expected. And now, standing here as my mother waits for an answer, I can't help but wonder, if she knew the real reason I've never talked about marriage since then, would she still look at me the same way? Before everything in my life splintered into pieces, things looked normal. Come even. I wasn't living some grand fairy tale, but I had built a life that felt steady, predictable, and finally mine. Most mornings started the same way, waking before my alarm, watching the soft light creep through my curtains, and feeling the small, quiet sense of pride that I'd managed to put myself on a path I actually wanted. I had a job I enjoyed, a circle of friends who brought warmth into my routine, and a sense of independence I'd worked years to earn. I wasn't perfect, but I was content. And contentment, I've learned, is fragile. More fragile than joy, more fragile than hope. It's easy to break without warning. My days were mostly a rhythm of work, errands, and the simple routines that make up a life. I handled clients with a confidence that had taken me years to grow into, and I loved the feeling of being someone reliable, someone people could trust. I didn't realize then how ironic that would later feel. In the evenings, I'd unwind with a book or meet a friend for dinner, half laughing about the little frustrations of the day. I had stability, freedom, and a future I could imagine clearly. And in that future, there was him. The man I once believed I was building everything for. He came into my life slowly, at a time when I wasn't even looking for anything serious. What started as easy conversations turned into something deeper, something I genuinely thought was real. He made me feel seen in a way that convinced me I could finally let down the guard I had spent years keeping up. Looking back, those early days feel almost unreal, like memories from someone else's life, too warm and too soft to truly belong to me. He blended easily into my routines, my friendships, my hopes. And maybe that was the first red flag, though I didn't recognize it then. I didn't question how effortless it seemed. I didn't think about how some people are skilled at slipping into the spaces you've left vulnerable. Everyone who knew me said I looked happier, more grounded, like I had finally found the missing piece. I clung to that idea, letting it color everything I noticed or didn't notice. There were moments that should have made me pause, times when his attention felt too calculated, or his compliments came just when my insecurities crept up. I told myself it was love. I told myself I was lucky. But beneath all that comfort, there was something else. A quiet tension I couldn't name. A feeling that would brush against me in rare moments when we were together, like a whisper I wasn't ready to hear. I'd push it away, blaming stress or overthinking, because acknowledging it would mean questioning the thing I wanted so desperately to believe in. And then there were the small inconsistencies, comments that didn't match actions, excuses that sounded too polished, silences that stretched longer than they should have. Nothing big enough to accuse, nothing sharp enough to cut through my trust. Just little shifts that nudged at me in the background of an otherwise comfortable life. Looking back, I can't believe how close I was to everything collapsing, how close he was to revealing the truth even in those early days. The signs were there, scattered through my routine like breadcrumbs I refused to follow. But back then, I wasn't searching for betrayal. I was searching for stability, for a future, for the kind of partnership I had watched other people find so effortlessly. I didn't yet understand that the life I was building, This slow, steady climb towards something better was sitting on a fault line I couldn't see. I didn't know a single moment could shatter the picture I had been holding in my head. I didn't know how quickly trust could turn to disbelief, or how love could twist into something darker. But something in me must have sensed it. Some quiet instinct buried beneath everything else. Because even in the happiness, even in the routines that felt safe, there were nights I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why a small part of me felt uneasy, like a storm was forming somewhere just out of sight. I had no idea then that I was already standing at the edge of it. The shift began so quietly that, at first, I didn't recognize it for what it was. It was like waking up one morning and noticing a faint crack in a wall you'd walked past 1,000 times, small enough to ignore, but impossible to forget once you'd seen it. With him, that crack showed up in the form of distance. Not dramatic, not loud, just distance. We were supposed to be moving forward, talking about merging our routines, our finances, even our futures in ways that made sense. But somewhere in those conversations, something about him changed. He grew careful with his phone, angling the screen away without seeming to. He became quicker to end calls, slower to reply. He started staying late at work, using the same tone he once used to surprise me, as if a rehearsed charm could mask the tension underneath. I told myself he might just be stressed, that everyone hits rough patches. But then there were the unexplained absences, the kind that created hollow spaces in my days, the kind that made my chest feel tight in a way I couldn't put words to. Whenever I tried to ask, he'd brush me off with a smile, a kiss on the forehead, a promise that everything was fine. And I wanted to believe him so badly that I swallowed my doubts whole. But doubt, when swallowed, has a way of clawing its way back up. The first real sign didn't come from him. It came from one of his friends, a comment so casual I almost missed the weight of it. We were out with a small group when someone joked about him being busier than usual. Another chimed in, laughing, saying something about him having too much fun lately. The way they looked at each other, the way their laughter shifted into a silence they tried to cover up, it struck me in a way I couldn't shake. On the walk home, he acted normal. He held my hand. He asked about my day. But my mind was replaying that moment, looping it like a scene with a hidden meaning I couldn't quite decipher. That night, as he slept next to me, breathing steadily, I lay awake, staring into the dark and feeling something heavy begin to settle inside me. The next crack came a week later, when I found myself alone in his apartment one afternoon. He had left in a hurry, forgetting a document he needed for work, and asked me to grab it and bring it over. I remember walking into his place and noticing how strangely spotless it looked. He was never messy, but this was a different kind of clean, the kind that felt curated, as if he had rushed to hide something rather than simply tidy up. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't suspicious at that moment. I just headed to his desk, opened the drawer to get the document, and then paused. A second phone lay inside, one I'd never seen before. My heart lurched in my chest. For a moment, I just stared at it, feeling 1,000 explanations push and pull inside my mind. Curiosity, fear, instinct. They battled each other silently, until instinct won. My hand reached for the phone almost automatically. And then, shockingly, it unlocked without a password. The screen lit up, and in that glow, my life as I knew it began to shift. Message after message flashed across the screen. Her name wasn't familiar. But the words, the tone, the intimacy, they hit me with a force that nearly knocked the breath out of me. They were planning things, laughing at things, talking about me, talking about how long he could keep the two of us separate. I felt my body go cold. My hands trembled so violently I had to steady myself on the edge of the desk. The betrayal wasn't just there. It was alive, mocking me from the screen. But it didn't stop there. The deeper I scrolled, the more the truth unraveled. There were pictures, plans, hotel receipts, voice notes, and worst of all, the timeline. They had been involved for months. Months of deceit, months of pretending, months of letting me build a future around someone who was splitting his life between two worlds. He wasn't just cheating. He was living a double version of himself, and I had been living next to a stranger I thought I knew. When I finally looked up from the phone, I didn't recognize myself. My reflection in the blank computer screen stared back at me, eyes wide, face pale, breath uneven. I couldn't even cry. The pain hadn't hit yet, only shock. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, grabbed the document he asked for, and walked out the door. My body moved on instinct, but my mind raced with every message, every lie I had been fed. When I finally reached my car, the first tear fell, then the second, then the flood. But even through the tears, something else formed inside me. Something dark, something sharp, something I didn't fully understand yet. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I watched him walk through the door like nothing had happened. He wrapped his arms around me, pressed his lips to mine, and asked about my day. I stood there, listening to his voice, feeling the weight of his lies press against my skin like a suffocating blanket. And instead of reacting, I took a breath. Because now I needed more than the truth. I needed proof. Proof that couldn't be twisted, denied, or explained away. So I began watching him. Not obsessively. Not obviously. Quietly. Strategically. I noticed how often he used the work excuse. How many nights he took calls outside. How often his mood shifted depending on who he had met that day. I paid attention to the places he said he was going, the clothes he wore when he left the house, and the tone of his voice when he made last-minute plans. Oddly, the more I observed him, the less he saw me. He was too confident, too comfortable in his deception. He truly believed I was blind. And then another crack. One evening, after he left for dinner with friends, I decided to drive to the area he mentioned, telling myself I just needed confirmation. I didn't want to spy. I didn't want to see something I couldn't see. But a part of me knew I had to. I parked near the restaurant he named. I watched the door. People came and went. But he never showed up. Not after 10 minutes. Not after 30. Not after an hour. And then, like fate wanted to twist the knife, I saw him, across the street, stepping out of a car with her. They looked comfortable, familiar, like they belonged together. But then something else happened. They walked into a building I recognized. A place he once told me he never went to anymore. A place he knew I avoided. A place where secrets were kept well. My chest tightened as I watched them disappear inside. I didn't go after them. I didn't need to. The realization alone was enough to ignite something furious inside me. Driving home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt unusually calm, like a storm that had finally settled into a deadly, focused path. All the confusion, all the disbelief, all the pain, it crystallized into clarity. He wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't just lying. He was using me. For convenience. For stability. For image. For whatever version of himself he couldn't maintain alone. And the worst part? His world was built on the assumption that I would never uncover his lies. That I would stay predictable. Silent. Loyal. But he was wrong. Because that night, as I lay awake staring at the darkness above me, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give him the chance to twist the story or withhold the truth. I was going to dismantle his world from the inside out. Quietly. Methodically. The same way he had dismantled mine. I began planning. Every step, every detail, every angle. Not out of impulse, but out of precision. I studied his habits, his routines, the things he valued most. The things he needed to protect. The things that could break him in ways he would never see coming. And just when I thought I had everything mapped out, something unexpected happened. Something that shifted the ground beneath me all over again. I discovered a secret bigger than the cheating. A secret he had been hiding from both of us. A secret that changed everything about the revenge I thought I wanted. And from that moment on, I realized I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with something far more dangerous. Something I would have to handle with the kind of precision that could either destroy him or destroy me. The secret I uncovered didn't come from his messages, or from anything he ever said. It came from a document I wasn't meant to see, an email that appeared on his synced laptop one night when he stepped into the shower. I hadn't been snooping. I hadn't even been thinking about him. I was simply using his laptop to send myself a file. But the notification flashed across the corner of the screen like a warning flare in the dark. It wasn't from her. It wasn't personal. It was financial. A message from his manager reminding him that his official review was coming up. A review tied to his promotion. A promotion that required proof of long-term stability, commitment, and favorable partner presentation for the company's public-facing leadership standards. Partner presentation. He wasn't just using me emotionally. He was using me professionally. I was part of his image, a perfectly curated accessory that made him look responsible, dependable, grounded. I wasn't a person to him. I was a stepping stone. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. All the pain from the betrayal, all the cold realizations, all the quiet suffering, it sharpened into a kind of clarity I had never felt before. My revenge was no longer about heartbreak. It was about taking back the power he thought he could steal from me. I spent the next days preparing with a calmness that wasn't calm at all. It was focus sharpened by fury. Every movement felt deliberate. Every plan, every risk, every detail came together like pieces of a puzzle I had been unknowingly assembling since the first moment he lied to me. I gathered the messages, the photos, the receipts, the voice notes, the evidence of his double life. But I didn't stop there. I found documents on that laptop, files he assumed I'd never see. Files showing how he had listed me as his future spouse in his employee profile. Files in which he attached pictures of us together as proof of partnership stability. Files where he used my name, my face, my life, to build his own. The man wasn't just cheating. He was climbing through me. And that made my revenge even clearer. The night it all came to a head was strangely ordinary on the surface. He invited me to dinner at one of our favorite spots, a place with soft lighting, warm music, and tables spaced just far enough apart to make you feel safe. He said he wanted a special evening. He said he had a surprise. I knew exactly what the surprise was. His promotion announcement. His future plans with me as the supportive partner beside him. His next step in a life built on lies. I dressed simply. Neutral colors. Nothing dramatic. But inside, my heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a kind of electric anticipation that made the world around me feel sharper, louder, colder. He met me outside the restaurant with a smile too bright to be real. He kissed my cheek, held my hand, led me inside with the confidence of a man who thinks he's in control. But he had no idea the ground beneath him was already splitting open. When we sat down, he launched into conversation instantly, talking about his week, his goals, his future. My future. Our future. Each word felt like another twist of the knife he had left in my back without ever acknowledging it. Then, halfway through his speech, he paused dramatically. He reached across the table. He looked me in the eyes with the kind of tenderness that once made my chest warm. "I have something important to tell you," he said. I felt almost sorry for him at that moment. Almost. But then I remembered her face in the photos. The messages. The way he used me like an accessory. And the softness inside me hardened instantly. "Actually," I said quietly, "I have something important to tell you." He blinked. Confused. Disoriented by the interruption. "Perfect." I reached into my bag, not for a dramatic reveal, not for theatrics, but for something simple. My phone. I set it on the table between us, screen down. Then I placed a neatly folded envelope beside it. He stared at them both, and I watched the first flicker of unease ripple across his face. "What's this?" he asked. "Your proof," I said. "Of everything." He laughed too quickly. "Proof of what?" "The life you built behind my back. With her. And the version of me you used to build your career." His smile vanished. His hands froze halfway to his glass. His eyes dropped to the envelope like it might burn him. I pushed it gently toward him. Inside were printed copies of everything. Photos, messages, receipts, documents. His own words betraying him more clearly than I ever could. He picked it up with trembling fingers, swallowing hard as he flipped through the pages. The color drained from his face. "You can't," he started. "I already did." His breath hitched. "You don't understand. My promotion is already gone. I finished for him." He looked up at me, horror spreading across his features. "What did you do?" "I sent everything," I said. "To your manager, to HR, to the review committee, and to your other partner. They all know who you really are." He stared at me like I had just dismantled the sky above him. His world, this carefully built structure of lies, manipulation, and performance, was collapsing in front of him, piece by piece. "You ruined my life," he whispered. "No," I said calmly. "I stopped you from ruining mine." Silence stretched between us. Heavy, electric. The entire restaurant seemed to fade into the background. It was just him and me, two people sitting in the wreckage of a life he had built without integrity. He leaned forward, voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think this makes you strong? This is petty. This, I cut in, is justice." He dropped the papers. His hands covered his face. I watched him break. Not with joy, not with triumph, but with a quiet sense of reclaiming something he had stolen from me. But the night wasn't over. Because when he finally looked up at me, eyes red, hands shaking, he said something I'll never forget. "You don't know everything," he whispered. "There's more you haven't seen. Something that could destroy you too." His voice cracked with a truth I didn't expect. A truth that didn't feel like a threat, but a warning. I sat perfectly still, my heartbeat thundering through my chest. "What more?" I asked. He stared at me with a hollow expression, then whispered, "If you think I'm the only one who lied, you're wrong." And in that moment I realized the real devastation hadn't even begun. The revenge I unleashed was only the start. Something darker, something deeper, was waiting just beneath the surface. And now, I had no choice but to face it. When he whispered those words, "You're not the only one who lied," I felt something inside me freeze. The restaurant, the noise, the scattered papers between us, everything blurred for a moment. Part of me wanted to walk away, satisfied that I had finally confronted the man who betrayed me. But another part, the part that had spent months unraveling his secrets, refused to move without understanding the weight behind his warning. So I waited. I let the silence settle. I let him break it. What he confessed wasn't what I expected. He didn't reveal another affair. He didn't threaten me with more personal betrayals. Instead, he admitted the part of his life he'd never allowed anyone to see. The pressure, the desperation, the crumbling identity beneath the polished exterior he presented to the world. He told me how he'd built his image like a fortress, brick by brick, lie by lie, convinced that if he ever stopped pretending, everything around him would fall apart. I realized then that his deception wasn't only about me. It wasn't even primarily about her. It was about a man who didn't know how to live without validation or power. A man who feared irrelevance more than loneliness. A man who didn't understand love unless it could be used as leverage. And as much as I didn't want to feel anything for him, part of me felt something close to pity. Not forgiveness. Not empathy. Just pity for someone who had spent so long performing strength that he forgot what it meant to actually be strong. But pity didn't erase what he did. It didn't excuse the manipulation. It didn't undo the hurt. If anything, his confession only affirmed what I already knew. My revenge wasn't cruelty. It was a consequence. I stood from the table that night with a strange sense of clarity. Not triumph. Not victory. Something quieter. Something steadier. When we walked out of that restaurant, me heading toward the cold air outside, him still slumped in his chair, staring at the ruins of his own making, I felt like I had finally stepped into my own life again. I didn't look back. The aftermath unfolded over the next few weeks. His company launched an internal review, and the truth came out swiftly. The promotion he'd been chasing evaporated before he could even defend himself. HR flagged his documented lies as a breach of integrity. His other partner left him, their shared plans dissolving instantly once the truth was laid out. His carefully constructed image cracked, then collapsed, leaving him to face the reality he'd tried so hard to hide. I heard bits and pieces through mutual acquaintances, not because I asked, but because people love sharing stories about a downfall they didn't anticipate. Some painted him as a victim of bad decisions, others as the architect of his own destruction. I didn't correct any of them. I didn't need to, because for the first time, none of it was my burden to carry. But revenge, real, emotional revenge, has a way of echoing long after the moment passes. In the quiet of my own home, I found myself replaying everything. The lies, the unraveling, the confrontation, the finality of walking away. I wondered if I had gone too far, if I had crossed a line, if I had, in trying to reclaim myself, become a version of the person I never wanted to be. But then I remembered the nights I cried alone, the days I questioned my worth, the moments I doubted my sanity, because he manipulated my perception so subtly that I mistook his deceit for my insecurity. I remembered how small he made me feel while I built him up, how deeply he fractured my trust while I protected his future, how effortlessly he used my life while acting like he was giving me his. And I understood something important. Revenge didn't break me. Lies did. Revenge simply gave me back the pieces. Still, there was a cost. A quiet one. A lingering one. Not guilt, but awareness. Revenge doesn't end when the truth comes out. It lives in the spaces where we question ourselves, where we measure who we were before the pain against who we've become after it. But in that reflection, I found something close to healing. I started rebuilding my life, not in grand ways, but in simple, private moments. I reconnected with my family. I took long drives with no destination. I let myself laugh again. I learned to trust my instincts, to listen when something felt wrong, and to honor my boundaries without apology. I remembered who I was before him and realized I liked that version far more than the one he tried to mold. With time, the anger softened. The hurt dulled. The need for revenge faded. Not because what I did was wrong, but because it was complete. The story had reached its end, and I no longer had to live inside it. But there is one thing I carried forward, a truth I think anyone who's ever been betrayed needs to understand. Revenge doesn't fix the past. It doesn't erase what was broken. It doesn't restore who you were before the betrayal. But it can give you something else. It can give you closure. It can give you the power they stole. It can give you the freedom to move forward without the weight of unanswered questions. That's what revenge meant for me. Not destruction, but release. So now, whenever someone asks why I never jumped into marriage, or why I took time to rebuild myself, I smile gently. Because the truth isn't about the man who betrayed me. It's about the woman who refused to be broken by him. And maybe that's the real message in my story. That sometimes the strongest revenge isn't the pain you return, but the life you reclaim. Because in the end, I walked away with something he never had. The truth, the courage to face it, and the strength to rebuild honestly. So let me leave you with this. When someone shatters your trust, is revenge about punishing them or freeing yourself?